My name's Esteban. I work for South by Southwest Gaming. I'm the community coordinator, and thank you. Somebody's cheering me back there, man. Come on. We're just a. I don't know. Is the sound quality here really bad?
It keeps cutting out.
Let's go ahead and turn this on. All right, can everybody hear me? All right, we're good. My name's Esteban again. I work for South by Southwest Gaming. I'm the community coordinator. And with these community meetups, we just wanted to kind of give back to the community with some insightful conversations, hopefully spur some new ideas, and get y'all interested in coming and joining South by Southwest Gaming, which, in case you guys don't know, is a free and open to the public event during South by Southwest. I would like to say it's the largest free and open to the public event, and in fact, the best free and open to the public event. Yeah, right? we got some people that are avid goers. So today we have.
Sorry.
We have Robert Brackenridge of Virtuix. He is pioneering the VR industry, and anybody here who's interested in VR and new VR technology, this is your man. And I will hand it off to Robert to say the rest. Do you want to use the microphone?
No. I'm loud, so hopefully I'll be able to hear, or you'll be able to hear me as I speak. So no worries there. So before I get started, so the topic tonight is about VR gaming in Austin. But I'm kind of looking around, and I don't see a lot of people who I've been knowing for the last few years in the VR side, and I don't see a lot necessarily on the gaming side. So just wanted to do a quick roundabout check as to who we have in the audience, and perhaps I might be able to kind of cater the comments and cater a bit of the talk to perhaps what y'all's interests are. So how many are brand new to the idea of virtual reality or VR? And have you never picked up a VR device before, such as a Google Cardboard or Oculus Rift or any of that? That's all brand new stuff, okay? And how many are in the game development industry and have built games before or are part of a company doing something like that? All right. How many are aspiring to move into the gaming industry? Okay, cool. How many are aspiring to move into something like VR or virtual reality? And how many have a focus on starting a company and being a startup entrepreneur, things like that? Okay, that'll help me a little bit. So, what I was really, when Esteban came to me and talked, we met at the VR Film Fest that happened probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was actually probably about 2 or 3 days before the last one where Patrick came in and talked a little bit. One of the things that I've been really wanting to share is kind of what's happening in Austin, specifically from VR and gaming. VR is one of those somewhat ubiquitous types of platforms, and some people might even argue whether it's even truly a platform. But interestingly enough, people have very little knowledge that there's actually some things going on in Austin. There are companies actually building stuff in Austin. I happen to work for one, as has been mentioned. It's called Virtuix, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we do. But I just wanted to make sure that people are starting to understand that, yeah, there are things actually happening here in Austin, and actually some great things. We've actually got a higher density of studios here, small studios that are building things cool that are going to be launched with these brand new technologies coming out next year. And actually, I'm quite proud of that. I like to say that I'm from Austin, and I like to talk about these companies. And so that's just one of the things that I really wanted to share. And then also at the same time, I wanted to give kind of a little bit of a rundown of where the VR industry is and give you a sense of what the cycle looks like. And for those of you interested in potentially building a business or getting into the industry, might help you kind of gain some insight as to what it's like right now and potentially what it might be here in the future. So with that, just real quick, to talk over real quick about the talking points tonight. Hopefully these are the things that you walk away with. And again, if you have questions or interests or things like that, I don't mind deviating a bit. I'm allocated 30 minutes. I'm more interested in making sure that you get your questions answered about what it is that you're curious about, rather than me necessarily covering all the talking points that I have to get through here or that I want to share with you. So again, we're going to talk about the local VR creators, how we came to be, talking a little bit about also how will we survive, because I think that's pretty critical in this stage. And we'll get into more about where the market is. And then also, how do we nurture them? And some of that revolves around this notion of community. How do we actually create a community conducive for keeping these little companies alive, creating more rich content in the future? So a little bit more as to why, this guy's up here talking. Myself and Finn, we're part of a community here in town wrapped around the Unity 3D engine. So that's a game engine. It happened that I've been doing Unity meetups across Texas, organizing communities around this game engine for almost 7 years now. So I really enjoy this whole aspect of building communities. And so you might be sitting there going, well, why? Seems like a pretty arduous, non-paying position. Well, in a sense, I actually built a little small gaming company in Houston, of all places. And as you can imagine, there aren't many game developers in Houston. So it was a little bit self-serving that I started to build this small community around this engine to start finding other people that were interested in building using Unity. And again, if you think about that, this is back in 2007, 2008, when mobile was really starting to kick off and pick up and become kind of an interesting place to be. So I was trying to find like-minded individuals, and at the same time, I was sitting there going, well, gosh, Houston is fun, but it's not necessarily as exciting from a game perspective. So that's when I came up to Austin just a few years ago and started to work with the local community here to build some surrounding interest inside the Unity game engine as well. And then since then, I've also become, adequately very involved with the IGDA side of things, and just really become, very embracing of the whole community here in Austin. So much so that now Virtuix has moved here to Austin. We were headquartered in Houston, and now we've actually got our headquarters here in Austin. We're in Austin and Houston, and now. So eventually here, the whole company is shifting. I'm the last one, I'm the only one left in Houston. And we're all moving here, we've moved here, and so this is obviously home. So I'm very passionate about how gaming continues to build and how we can take it into maybe that next phase of things. Because if you're kind of a student of the gaming industry around here, you've seen those cycles. You've seen them kind of go like this, you've seen them go like that, you've seen them going sideways, and as an observer from the outside, I'm kind of seeing this little bit sideways type of thing. And I think VR could be one of those new rocket pieces that could really help out this community in general. And so about, gosh, it was a little over a year ago now. Come on in. No.
I'm sorry, I'm going for the
grab some pizza, grab some food, grab some sodas. Come on, don't worry about it.
Thank you.
This is all just a conversation. So about a year and a half ago, about a summer ago, we, Finn, myself, and several others put together this notion of how do we start to create this VR community. And Finn came up with this idea called the Jamapalooza, and it was basically a whole week associated with VR Jam, with a VR Jam, with a VR meetup, with Unity meetup associated with VR. So we just kind of created all this stuff. And out of that, we created about 5 or 6 different VR experiences and games all over a place called Mr. Tramps. Maybe you guys are familiar with that place, hopefully you are. And we just had a great time. And so out of that kind of birthed this notion of the meetup. So I myself are one of the founders of the VR Austin meetup, and Alex Schwartz as well, who you'll see his game company as well. Yeah?
The largest VR meetup in Austin, correct?
Well, yeah, this is probably the only VR meetup, so to say. But thank you. Yes, it is indeed the largest. And I'll talk about our next date because it's actually getting quite exciting. We've gone from this little 40-some-odd people hanging out at Mr. Tramps to next week we're going to almost hit 300 at our next meetup. So it's a big deal, and we're getting some really great attention and some really cool companies coming in to visit with us. So besides that, besides the community aspect, my role with Virtuix is the director of games. I'm the dog. I help find content for our company, so people that are actually building games and interested in building stuff, specifically, if you're walking or running inside of a virtual reality experience. And I also handle a small team ourselves, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a little bit. So we create our own content as well. So I am one of these little studios that I'm about to talk about. So I've also got a background. I'm from Canada. So I have to bring in hockey, of course, everything I talk about. So everybody and their brother, if you're an entrepreneur and you have some sort of a pitch, you always throw up the hockey stick, right? This is the typical market slide that sits there and says, okay, yes, if I get this little piece right now, this hockey stick happens and I'll just explode through the roof. Well, VR has that exact same hockey stick type of a market projection. So if you look back down here in 2014 is kind of when things really started to kick off, maybe a little bit earlier in 2013 with the advent of the Oculus Rift. And now we're up through 2015. We're starting to see some new interest in all these brand new devices that are about to come up. And then eventually here, we're going to see these massive growth types of opportunities as they happen over the next few years. In 2020, as you see, they're projecting, and this is BI Intelligence. You can look at across many others that will basically say something very similar, whether it's 25 million, 50 million, 30 million. We don't know. It's just some wild ass guess that they're throwing up there saying it's going to explode. But specifically what I want to talk about really fast with just the near term here is this little piece right here. And this information is actually somewhat old. This is a projection that was done back in 2014 associated with what they felt was going to happen in 2015. And so we'll learn in a little bit that that's not necessarily exactly the way that happened. Well, that's extremely important for a small company that's trying to depend upon, making money during these cycles. So let's talk a little bit about exactly who these companies might be. So around the Austin area, forgive me if there's somebody in the audience that has a VR studio that I have forgotten. Of course, I am part of the community, but I don't necessarily know everybody. I try to get around, but I'm certainly not the guy that knows absolutely everybody. If you want to know somebody that knows everybody, Finn's the guy. he knows everyone. So again, I apologize if I missed anybody. But really, what we've got here is we've got a handful of these small companies. And when I say small, I'm not talking that these are the EAs of the world. These aren't the Activisions. These aren't the guys that just released this brand new wonderful game that just came out last night that everybody's playing, or the night before, myself included. Yep. So these are small companies, and I'll talk about them specifically and individually, and why these small companies are here the way they are, and maybe we'll find some parallels into a previous industry as to how this is all happening and may move forward. But anyway, so there's Ghost Machine, obviously Virtuix, myself, Meta 3D, who you may or may not have heard of. Phaser Lock's a brand new small one. Alchemy's actually doing very well. Gunfire is some old seasoned veterans from another company of the past, and Unanello as well, another great guy. So specifically, let's talk about Unanello. So if you kind of remember that little graph that I showed, it's taking off very slowly. We're in this kind of trickle effect. So this is actually one guy and a couple of others that are coming in and doing some various little things here and there, but it's really just one guy, and his name's Aaron. But Aaron has created all of these really interesting, fun experiences. These experiences, however, aren't necessarily blowing out the door. So one of the things I really want to share with you is even though people are making content right now, there really isn't a lot of revenue going out with each and every one of these experiences. So, and Aaron, if he were here, would share exactly that. It's very, very challenging to get out these sorts of applications right now. So for instance, if you don't mind, one of the things that people are targeting is this device right here, which is the Google Cardboard, which is, as you can tell, it's made out of cardboard. It's very inexpensive. And so many people, originally when all those projections were coming up, everybody was sitting there saying, well, gee, if that's just cardboard, everybody and their brother is going to get one. Well, yes, that's possibly true. There might be a lot of them out there. They're also, because they are cardboard, they're also quite destructible and end up getting thrown away and all sorts of things like that. Wet, yeah. But at the same time, they're also up on Google Play, which everybody who's part of the gaming industry, if you're up on Google Play, it's very hard to extract revenue from any of those sorts of engagements. So it's very, very challenging, but it's one guy. So how much does it keep, how much does it take to actually keep one guy you know, feeding himself, keeping himself alive, housed, and things like that. It's very, very low in a sense. I mean, for Aaron, you're probably sitting there saying, well, no, it's a lot of money. I need a lot of money. But in reality, it's nothing compared to something like a large studio that it would take in order to support the development of a large VR application in general. So Aaron has been around it for quite a while, and right now, Aaron is looking at all the various different types of platforms that are, like, for instance, I don't know if he actually went to the dive yet, but he's looking at, you know, Samsung Gear VR, the DK2, and he's feeling around to see where those market opportunities are. But at the same time, what I want to point out is Aaron is not a game developer. He's a sound guy. He's basically been making all sorts of really cool and interesting sound type of stuff. And I met Aaron about 1.5 years ago, and I'm sitting there scratching my head. I'm like going, wait a second, how and why are you actually doing this? Well, he basically picked up an engine such as Unity and found a way that he can now start to develop with it fairly easily, and then start to share his audio, his experiences that he was building, the audio experience, now visually. And so he's creating these really beautiful little experiences like Eden River, where you're flying along through a river. It's very soothing, very relaxing. And it's a different modality to the type of thing that he's been doing in the past. So it's something that he's doing because of his passion, more so than he is because of necessarily the revenue. Now, obviously, the revenue hopefully comes at some point. That's the struggle. But the interesting thing is he's done now 5 or 6 of these various different experiences, and
currently working on a launch title for the Vive now.
And something coming down that's going to be very exciting for the Vive.
So if anything, it got him. They sent him a Vive. You know.
That's exactly right. So that's the trick, because there's a lot of these various companies that are hungry for content, and they will now give you the developer kit if you've got something to show them that gives you some sort of substantial backing that you can actually do something. They'll hand you these kits, and then you can go out and start developing for them. So that's one story. This is one a rock solid idea, for instance, how somebody is really coming from the grassroots, pulling something together and approaching this industry. Really, it's just one guy with some really great talent. Ghost Machine is another interesting one. Ghost Machine is, again, it's a group of some seasoned veterans. Many of them have to go out and work other types of jobs and come back in and contract various different stuff with Ghost Machine, but you can see how many different experiences these guys have created. It's absolutely amazing. It's actually something that I really wasn't watching too closely up until about, probably 6 or 7 months ago. Happened to be a pretty decent friend of mine. He's around the Unity community quite often, and was at that original jam. And then all of a sudden I looked at his site and he's got 6 or 7 different VR games. I'm like going, holy cow. So he's done a couple of them, for instance, Warhawks and Final Strike, are, as you can imagine, sitting in some sort of a cockpit, whether it's a sci-fi or whether it's a old World War II type of a deal. Endless Dead, as you can imagine, is a running around shooting type zombie game. Golf Masters was a very interesting twist, but it's really, really cool. It's a golf game in VR. And then Invasion Force, Invasion Force was a mech style shooter that he's also done. But again, this is a small team. It's really one main guy driving it, and ancillary other guys coming in and doing programming, art, sound, scraping it together to really try to make something, okay? At the same time, these guys are picking up contracts on the side for VR types of experiences for other engagements. So if you go to their website, for instance, you'll see one that they did for the Veterans Affairs Office or something like that, which was an experience that allowed veterans to visit a memorial in Washington. So, again, that's kind of another very aggressive people getting out there, trying to get in, not making a whole lot of money, doing their best to actually establish themselves, which is probably pretty critical at this point. Then we have Meta 3D. Meta 3D is another interesting one. You see, everything they have, by the way, is got VR at the front. I guess these guys are marketing guys because they know how the value of VR is supposedly going to draw people on Google Play. Again, they're heading down the cardboard side of things. So they got the VR Scary Forest, the VR Something Matter, another Happy Forest, some Alien Attack, Forsaken City. Again, these are all short form interesting pieces of content, just once again, getting their name out there, getting established. And if you go look at each one of these games, there's not a ton of ratings, there's not a ton of downloads. They're really just getting out there, once again, and anchoring. At the same time, again, this is a studio that's out there doing contract work. So if you go to their site, this VR stuff is still fairly new to them. They're actually really, really good at doing animation work. They're doing excellent experiences and marketing types of roles and other games and things like that. So they've been a work for hire company for a long time, and now diving into the whole VR side of things. And then there's us. We it's not your traditional approach to game design and game development. We're a hardware company. We build something called the Omni. The Omni is a virtual reality treadmill. What the heck's that? Basically, it's a device that allows you to walk and run inside of VR. And if we've got time here a little bit, I'll show some videos of it. And so as you can imagine, we're slightly different than what everybody else is doing. Instead of being seated or just hanging out in one spot, we're actually allowing you to walk and run around in the various different experiences that you want to do. So why am I building games? Well, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So the Omni, we were a Kickstarter, okay? So we did a Kickstarter back in 2013, and actually South by Southwest was a big, big, big part of our whole marketing exercise that we did just prior to launching our Kickstarter. So at South by, we had, I think, a suite somewhere, and then we invited people in, a lot of the key press people, trying it out. And then right as we launched finally into our Kickstarter, we blew through our goal in a very, very short amount of time, which was $150,000 at the time. We did it in like a little over like an hour or something like that. And we nailed it. And then right after that, we were up to about 1.2, 1.3 million. So we sold a ton of Omnis. So, and I can't take credit for any of that. There were a lot of really smart people doing a lot of the marketing activities well before that I ever even came to be. And in fact, an interesting story was I was sitting in Santa Clara at the time at another conference called AW, which is the Augmented World Expo, looking at another Kickstarter project called the Meta, which was an augmented reality type set of goggles. And I'm talking to these guys thinking about backing their project. And somebody comes walking up to me and says, "Hey, have you heard of this thing called the Omni?" And I said, "No, what's the Omni?" And so they sat there and pulled out the mobile device, sat there and showed me, and all of a sudden I looked closer and I thought, "Holy crap, that's Jan. That's my good friend. He lives in Houston. We went to the same graduate school." And I was sitting there going, "Holy crap." So I picked up the phone. I said, "Jan, what's going on?" He goes, "Robert is going crazy." I mean, literally, he's sitting there watching the numbers just go like this out the door with all these Omnis that he's selling or he's going to have to deliver as well. So the challenge became is we've got this hardware device. What are people going to do? So that's where I came in. I said, "Jan, it's all wonderful that you have this great piece of hardware and this excited audience, but they need to be able to do something." And so that's what we do. We build games internally. It's a small team again, 6 people. And when I say 6 people, these are 6 people that have only been with my company for now 3.5, 4 months. So prior to that, it was myself and one other game designer building demos, trying to kind of figure things out. And we used VR Austin as kind of one of our playgrounds that we brought in to see if people liked the stuff that we were doing. So prior to that, we were sitting there listening to everybody going, "Oh gosh, if you move around too fast inside of VR, you get sick. What are we going to do?" So we started building these fun experiences because, as you can imagine, running around in VR, and everybody and their brother typically on all these large games love to play shooters, and so that's a natural opportunity for us. But everybody telling us in the VR industry is shooters are bad, they make people sick. And so we brought one of these shooter experiences to the VR Austin and we said, well, let's see if we make people sick. And again, this is the support of the community. They tried it out, they told us where it was bad, they told us where it was good, and then we took it and made it into something better. And so our 3 main features that we have right now is we're pushing kind of this action horror, which is known as Shadow Ops. It's got a bit of a story in the background. You're running around, you've got these characters in there that look very similar to zombies that you're also shooting. They're actually called possessed. They're not quite zombies, but as you can see, one of these little scary little guys is down that tunnel that you ultimately run and shoot, and you're kind of a covert operations type of thing. And then there's also training ops, which we've decided to lighten things up a bit rather than running around in something scary, because we actually took that to GDC, and we had people telling us that they wanted to get off the Omni because they were too scared. So we learned our lessons there, and we decided to make something fun. And not that you're actually shooting a person, an object, or something that you're killing. In this case, you're running around shooting targets. So it's pure fun, non-violent, which is something that we've had a blast doing. But that was the prototype that we actually did at VR Austin. And what we found is actually, by focusing on that, we've made the experience truly fun, rather than worrying about being some sort of an aggressive attack style game, which I'm not knocking those at all, it's just a different approach. And then where we've gone next is we've taken that now into the world of what we're calling Omni Arena. Omni Arena is a multiplayer experience. Oh, that's new. Nobody's doing multiplayer in VR yet. So here we are, we're doing that. Not only that are we doing multiplayer VR, but for those of you that are, kind of knowledgeable about the various different pieces of hardware, we're combining the Vive, we're combining the Touch, we're combining all these other features into the Omni as well to see how it is we can make this awesome, ultimate experience in VR and running and having an absolute blast. And so multiplayer is coming really fast. And so that also then starts to set the stage that, wow, you can run around inside of VR yourself, but also now you can run around inside with your friend, which, for those of you that have been following the industry a bit, is exactly where Facebook is hoping we'll go, right? So that's one of the big reasons why they picked up this lovely little company called Oculus. Because they believe VR is a naturally social experience. And if you think about wearing these goggles, one of the biggest beefs people have is the fact that it kind of isolates you. Well, they want to open that up. They want to be the friends of Facebook in that sense. Okay, then there's Alchemy. And Alchemy is an absolutely wonderful story. This is a company, about 5 guys. They're distributed all over the place. Alex Schwartz is the founder. He happened to be from Boston. His wife ended up having to move here for another position with a certain family. And because of that, he's now in Austin and now one of the founding people inside of the whole VR side. Well, his company's been doing casual games on Steam for a while. They've built 3 or 4, done fairly well, and now have moved all into VR. So because of that, the first one that they did was this game called Oculus, which is you're diving off of buildings. And it wasn't necessarily my cup of tea because it was rather nerve-wracking, especially because they did one with the Google Cardboard, and so you're standing there doing this. And anyway, it was a little bit much for me. But because of all these things, again, they have a track record. They have proof that they can actually get stuff done. And because of that, they came up with this other new and interesting idea called the job simulator. And they took it and they started showing it, and they got Oculus involved, and now they got Steam, because obviously they've already had that relationship with Valve. So because of all that traction, now this is a diamond in the rough here going in the Austin area. They're now, instead of 4 or 5 guys, they've got their own little house that they've started calling the VR house. And I think they're up to like 8 or 9 and soon to be potentially 14, 15. So it's a small team growing quite rapidly into this new semi-explosive opportunity. So these guys, of all the companies here in town, really understand how to drive this. So they're starting to monetize, and the way that they're doing that is they're going from platform to platform to platform, making a little bit here, leveraging the content that they've already done, and doing it again across all these other platforms. So this is one way that this small team is now sustaining themselves. On top of that, because they've already done some other games on Steam, those games are still selling, and they're still bringing in some revenue, so that's how they're kind of sustaining themselves. And now they're at that point because Job Simulator is one of the launch titles. So they're going out, when all of these Rifts go out, they're one of the ones that are going to be right there with them. Same thing with the Vive. So they've got a golden opportunity when things start to rocket here in 2015. Looking for big things coming out of Alchemy. Gunfire, another bunch of seasoned veterans. These are guys who've been in the industry for a long time, out of Vigil. who then became Crytek, who then became Gunfire. They're doing some really cool things too. Their first one that they did on VR was Hero Bound. For those of you who may have known that title in the past. It's an interesting approach to VR. I encourage you to go out and try it. It's free if you happen to have a Gear VR device. I don't think it's on cardboard yet, but it's a 3D experience. I mean, a third-person experience where you're looking at your character kind of walking around. It's an interesting perspective. And again, Chronos has been selected again as a launch title from Oculus. Yes. I'll try and get that mixed up. So again, here's number 2, launch title. Being a launch title, in case you haven't really, grasped already, it's a really, really important thing to get, obviously, your brand up there in front of these millions of people thinking about this device, and on top of that, just being that game that's out there as well. And this one, as this is the last one on my list here, is a very interesting story. These are a couple of guys, all had different jobs at different companies, who came together and built something fun in about 2 weeks. And for those of you who've seen the old game in the past where you're basically the air traffic controller on an iPad or mobile device directing air traffic, flight control I believe is what it was called, and directing these airplanes as you're coming, this is a very similar type of a model, but they basically made it fun and taking into account their artistic talents, put something together quick, and came to the jam for the Vive device in June. And when they were there, they had a bunch of people that came in from Valve, a bunch of people that came in from HTC, and those guys were loving what they did. And guess what? Now they're a Vive title. Now they're also, I do believe, an Oculus Touch title, launch title as well. So again, great content, great place. They're sustaining themselves by other means other than what they are, currently doing. I think that's obviously changed now that they have been successful in acquiring these launch opportunities. So again, here we have a number 3, another diamond darling happening here in Austin. And again, the density is pretty important. There aren't this many small companies or even VR titles in one area in any given part of the United States or even the world for that matter. And at one point, there were more Vive systems here in Austin than anywhere else in the world. The Vive is it's a device that has these 2 base stations up there that send out lights, and it has hand controllers. It's a really neat, really cool system. And Valve was, not necessarily handing those out to each and every person. So having one of those was, you were looked upon as somewhat privileged, and obviously you knew what you were doing. So the density of those being the largest here in Austin was actually something that, everybody was quite proud of. So again, I just want to give you a bit of a sense inside of Austin, how these companies are making it, how they're surviving currently, and potentially what the opportunities look like ahead. So now we shift gears slightly, and we're looking now from, instead of this sustain yourself, try to build something, maybe build a bit of a reputation, getting some sort of a title, launch title, hopefully. By the way, for those of you that have been around a little bit, you also know a bit of the pain. Oculus has been promising this consumer version for almost a year now. It's been delayed. Not saying that that was a bad thing, but it's just been one of those real challenges that everybody was expecting. Well, gosh, we're going to get that consumer version, and all of a sudden there's going to be millions of these devices out there, and I'm going to be rich. Well, for that poor guy who's trying to still make his rent, who's been doing this for the past 2 years, and now he's got to struggle through another 6 months or a year, that's very, very challenging. And then all of a sudden you think about small teams trying to do the same thing. So they've been scraping it together for a long time in the hopes that some of these devices have finally started to come to market. Well, now they are. So those that have been able to sustain themselves are probably going to have a great chance of doing something fairly good. In 2015 and 2016, we start to shift into where the bigger devices start to move in. So we see now the Sony side of things. We see the Valve systems. I probably should have thrown a slide up here for the new people because I don't like just talking about all these systems but not necessarily sharing what they actually are. I was thinking we might have a more VR crowd here. So But the other side of this is the bigger challenge that I see here is that projection that I have up there is something that somebody put together in about 2014. Well, it hasn't necessarily happened. And so now you're starting to see people such as the guys from Oculus, Lucky Palmer, for instance, specifically the CEO, or not the CEO, the founder. He's basically saying, look guys, this hockey stick thing that everybody's been promising may not be exactly the way this happens. And Oculus knows this better than anybody else because they've had these people kind of crying to them, asking them, hey, when are you going to launch? When are you going to launch? I've got this game. It's really exciting. I can't wait. We've got this number of devices that are coming out. So when am I actually going to be able to start making money off of all this stuff that I've been developing for? So they're now starting to say, well, that takeoff, it might be longer, it might be shallower. So work with us on this. See, the end result here is still something very, very exciting, but we need to start planning for something more gradual, something a little bit less, monstrous. The spigot of money just isn't going to open up and start flowing. So we have to start planning on how these little small companies are going to sustain themselves. How are they going to actually make some money to keep going? So kind of that's one of my major points here. And when we're saying these various devices, we're talking about the Oculus Rift. Q1, Q2 of next year is when that one is slated to come out. The Samsung Gear VR is supposed to be launching their consumer version any day now. So if you're an owner of a Samsung S6, Note 4, Note 5, soon to be potentially their S7, they have this device. It's about, I thought it was $4. I think they dropped the number down, but it's a device that you sit there and slide your phone in and instantly have a VR experience. It's actually quite wonderful. It's one of my favorite devices.
I think it went on sale at Best Buy yesterday.
Best Buy yesterday. So it's price tag?
You can pre-order it.
$99.
Yeah, $99.
Yeah, including a controller. Then there's companies like this, which aren't up there. This is a little company out of San Antonio. Thanks, Finn, for bringing this in. This is a company called Merge. You want to tell them a little bit about it?
Sure, it's a marshmallow soft, little squishy foam VR headset, similar to kind of the Google Cardboard, where it has a slot you slide your phone into. It has adjustment things for the lenses. It has a little Wiimote-looking Bluetooth controller. Works double with the SDK, where you can have like dual hand controllers while you're wearing it.
It doesn't require it. The two fingers on the top.
And this can also be like inputs, and as well as it's the only one I'd hand a kid a smartphone in. You know what I mean? So it's like foam. So if you want to check it out, feel free to come by. But yeah, he cut the first one out of a yoga block and a kitchen knife.
These are great people. They're out of San Antonio, by the way. And,
I think they're moving to Austin.
At some point, they're going to bring their office up to Austin as we get them up here. But yeah, instead of buying a piece or getting this little piece of cardboard, you've actually got something that's much more safe for your phone. It's softer. It's actually nicer to wear, more comfortable. Again, the price point's really great. The other side of it that I also like to mention is it's one of the only ones out there for the iPhone. So I'm an iPhone guy. I've got an iPhone. Android devices obviously can still work, but there are many different options for Android, very few for iPhone. This happens to be one of them. So if you guys are in the market, if you have an iPhone, you're looking for some sort of a device, I'd certainly check that one out. And there also happen to be the sponsors, one of the sponsors at VR Austin next week. So if you're interested in coming by and actually trying one out, seeing it for yourself, and I think they're giving away a couple of 2 or 3 as well. So then on top of that, we've got the HTC Vive, which again is a partnership with Valve. That's a great big system. We have no idea how much it's going to cost. It could be $300, it could be $1,000, we don't know. We've also got the Sony PlayStation VR, which is something I'm extraordinarily excited about. There are, gosh, I can't remember how many they've said. Is it 12 million PlayStation 4s now out there? I can't remember, is it 12 or 20?
25.
25, there we go, thank you. So if you think about that number of people and how interested they might be in buying what they're roughly saying might be about a $350 headset to add to their system, that's an extraordinary opportunity. That, to me, is probably one of the best adds to VR, because you don't have to necessarily buy a $1,500 computer, although you get one $1,000, say, maybe not. I know our systems at work cost $1,600. So that to me is one of the most interesting places, because you've got 25 million people who already have a system ready to go, and for a small amount of money, you can have a great experience. Sony has a fantastic, it used to be called the Morpheus, now it's the PlayStation VR. It's a great headset, very comfortable, and they have a large number of launch titles that are coming out as well. And we've got local developers that are also building for Sony PlayStation VR as well. So they're very excited about that. And just a small plug, we're one of those little hardware guys here as well. They're hoping to get out there. A little bit more about the Omni. We're not a headset, so I don't necessarily belong on this slide, but we are a hardware device. And the nice thing about what it is we can work with any one of those headsets. We're nothing more than a great big gamepad, if you want to think of us as that, but instead of using your thumbs, you're running around and using your feet, okay? So we're quite excited about all of these guys being extremely successful. So, but wait, I want to sit there and also kind of bring your mind back to that curve that we were just looking at and start drawing some similarities as to where we've seen this potentially before. And you'll quickly see, especially those that have been around the industry for a while, you'll note that, gosh, that looks a lot like what mobile did, beginning almost 10 years ago, and how that slow trickle of smartphones started to come out, how the slow trickle of applications, games, and everything like that started to happen, and eventually we hit that big takeoff point. So again, this is kind of where a little bit of history comes in, because that's also about the time when I was starting to bring the whole notion of Unity into my life, and how I struggled with encouraging people to become mobile game developers using Unity. And at the same time, I was sitting there going, gosh, here we are again. VR has a lot of parallels to where mobile was that number of years ago, okay? So the thing is that I would love to sit there and say that, wow, had we looked back, how did Austin actually do inside the mobile gaming space? Well, I kind of say we just did We didn't certainly explode. We didn't have a lot of these great companies that ended up doing, fantastic, knocking them out of the park types of games and really blowing and going. So I would say, if there was some opportunity for us as a community to kind of come together and maybe get some different types of things, experiences, and so forth going, I think Austin has an exceptional opportunity now to kind of wake up and look at this whole thing called VR. So one of the questions that I do want to also dive into is, why Austin this time? Why is Austin such a great place? Well, it's actually one of the only areas that really has a strength in all three of these categories, which I'm very passionate about VR being not just a gaming platform. It is not about just games. It's about film, it's about music, it's about that rich experience that everybody is going to have inside of this whole virtual reality side of things. So yeah, we're talking a little bit about gaming tonight, but every time I get up on the stage at VR Austin, I sit there and I do a quick shout out for the film industry, because I'm extremely excited about all the stuff that people are doing inside of film. So Austin is one of those rare places that you have all of these things happening. And what I'm hoping happens is that these things start to mix and mingle. So we see the film guys thinking about how they can produce interactive experiences, because that's kind of new to them, because normally you're sitting there behind a screen, you're not in there working around playing with various different things. So they naturally start to reach out to the game guys. And often it's the game stuff that's starting to drive the most of these experiences, the game engine. So the game guys have some expertise. Same thing with the audio guys. Audio guys are like going, wow, I can do this great sound, whether it's just plain music or game music or however it is that you envision it. But as we've already seen, there's sound guys out there starting to think visually. How do I play with music? And that's exceptional, and VR can do that. So that's what really excites me about Austin more than the other gaming centers that have already popped up. Seattle, yeah, they've got a music scene, perhaps not so much on the film. I think Austin has some strengths above and beyond where Seattle has been or is. San Francisco, I think that there's also opportunities here beyond what San Francisco has. So I think we've got a real strength here in Austin. Not to mention, obviously, the base that we've already got inside of games. So how do we do this? that's kind of where I want to leave this last bit of the talk tonight. How do we actually start to intermingle? Meetup.com is an absolutely fantastic place for people to start exploring various things. There's lots of geeks and gamer meetups. There's tons of other meetups as well. I've been using Meetup for a long time for the Unity side as well. So we started this VR Austin thing. Again, you'll notice there's nothing up there saying that this is VR Gaming Austin. We want everybody that's doing anything that having to do with games, film, music. It's very much aligned with exactly where the South by Southwest is. They're all over the place in terms of this interactive entertainment. That's exactly where we want to be as well. So it's going to take things like that. And VR Austin is not going to be the only one, hopefully. There's going to be other. Kaleidoscope Film Fest just happened, again, 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was a guy who brought a bunch of Gear VR systems together, along with some interesting content that people came in and tried. So we need a lot more community types of events, things that happen, jams, places where people can actually try VR, because that's the one hard thing about VR. The sales cycle on VR is pretty tough, because it's one of those things that I can sit there and talk to you about until I'm blue in the face, but it's not going to make any sense to you unless you actually try it. So one of the most important things for us as an industry is we've got to get these devices out there and sharing with people and telling them, not telling, letting them experience what it is that we're doing. So the VR Austin is one of those places. Again, just a quick note, November 18th at the North Door is our next one. If you guys have any interest whatsoever, please come out and join us. All completely free, much as what the South by Southwest Gaming is doing here. Exceptional opportunity to come out and see some VR yourself. We've got some great experiences happening this 18th. We're bringing an Omni out for the very first time to let people try. Thank you. There's another one called a company up there called Zoom, which is bringing an exercise bicycle and how you actually get on it and ride it. Finn had a blast with it just not too long ago.
I killed myself on that.
Yeah. So again, us and as well as Resume we're basically in this mode that we want to promote active VR rather than sitting down necessarily. Playful, which has done a brilliant little title called Lucky's Tale. That's a company out of Dallas. We're very excited to have them down here. Great people, great, absolutely fun platformer style game. Really, really fun. I'm excited about when it comes out. We've got another couple of guys, for instance, Merge, that's also coming out to share with us their launch in the American market. I think they're already in the UK. Then also they're going to give away a couple of these devices as well. So again, I'm stressing this important thing about community, because one of the things that's going to happen is small teams are going to need to come, because that's really the only ones right now that are going to be able to put this sort of cost-efficient, streamlined way of getting content out there, unless somebody is really willing to stick some serious stakes out there, which there are companies doing it. But it's these small teams right now that have extraordinary opportunities, and this co-mixing of people in various different areas is exactly the way a lot of this stuff happens, whether it's at a game jam, whether it's at a meetup, people start to find each other and then create some brilliant ideas. And again, it's that intersection of all three of those that I'm really excited about, because I guarantee this is not just about games. So, I'll leave you with this. Hey, it's weird in here. So, come on out to VR Austin, and thank you very much, Esteban, for putting this South by Southwest gaming experience together. This is an absolutely very important piece of the gaming community in Austin. The IGDA is also another extremely important piece. Unfortunately, they just haven't had as many sorts of get-togethers as what we'd hoped in the past. Again, thank you very much for putting these things together, and please join me in thanking you. I appreciate them for having us tonight. I don't know exactly what the
entrepreneurial center of gravity in Austin. If you're an entrepreneur and any part of entrepreneurial center of gravity in Austin, be a part of Capital Path.
So this is a co-working facility is often what it's called. So they have desks that you can be a professional at, which is something very important for the typical freelancer, whether it's in the gaming or the VR industries.
Let's, do you have time? We'd like to take some questions.
Sure.
Maybe Oh, sorry.
That's all right, go ahead.
I just had a quick question because I know a lot of people here are new to VR.
Yep.
And there's in my opinion, different tiers of VR. I mean, we have the cardboard, we have the mobile, slip-ins, then we have the ones that hook up to your computer. Could you kind of explain what those three are, real quickly, pros and cons, and what names are associated with them?
So yeah, we've got, it's a couple of different ways that you can often categorize it. What I'll do is I'll also throw up something in the background that you guys can kind of set your eyes at. I promised I'd show you what the Omni was as well.
Oh, if you can show that video of the Omni.
So this is, I'll tell you a little bit of a joke about this as well. So the thing that this guy's standing on is actually the Omni, which allows you to walk around on a treadmill, and whether it's this one or the next one, we transform the guy into a girl. There it goes. So it's a device that actually changes your sex as well, apparently.
It's really tight built.
Anyway, so yeah, so back to your question. So there's really kind of two main approaches today. One is going with devices like these mobile devices, for instance, that are now coming into, whether it's the Merge, whether it's the Samsung Gear VR, or whether it's the cardboard. It's basically, this cell phone in your pocket, it is a computer, and it actually has a tremendous amount of power. In fact, the power of the cell phone is growing at such a rate that within a short amount of time, perhaps a year, this device in your pocket is going to be as powerful as an Xbox 360. They're getting very, very close, and in fact, there's a speculation that the next gen, possibly the generation after that cell phone, is actually going to be advancing faster than the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One. So we may actually see that time when a mobile device actually outpaces the consoles. So what that means is there's an extraordinary opportunity for you, because the device itself is nothing more than a display plus a computer. And it's actually the same display that's going on inside of the Oculus Rift, the Vive, all of these things. All of these guys are often being built by Samsung or the other the manufacturers as well. So there's two real big philosophies. One is the mobile, which I absolutely love. One of the reasons why is there's no cords. It's all self-contained. Right now there's a bit of a challenge on the frame rate, meaning you can't put as robust of an experience on there, but okay, it's great. The other camp is going into something like an Oculus Rift, which you've got a cord and it's attached back into a PC. So the PC itself is driving the system. And we can argue whether the Sony falls into that camp as well, but the reality is there is a cord coming off the Sony PlayStation VR that's going back to the PlayStation 4, which is in fact a computer. So those are the two main pieces right there. You've got the corded version, which is being driven by a PC back into the Rift, and then you've got the mobile version, which is the slide in, whether you're sliding it into cardboard, Gear VR, or what have you.
And will both work with the treadmill?
Any of them and all of them will work with the treadmill, yes. In fact, one of the free pieces, thank you again for the plug, gosh, I love it. One of the most fun experiences is actually the Gear VR, because it's Bluetooth, and you can Bluetooth connect from our treadmill into the Gear VR. So you can imagine on our device, you've got a cord, well, hopefully you've got a boom over your head, otherwise that cord, if you're turning around, can get wrapped around and be a real pain in the butt. So we've created the boom to keep it up, the cord up over your head. But in the Gear VR, or even for that matter, the Merge, there are no cords. So you have a full 360-degree, very, very freeing experience. So that's actually one of my favorites. Other questions? Sure.
I have a question about software.
Yeah.
You spoke a lot about VR not just being games, but also film and music.
Yeah.
And I've seen mergers of like music and games, and I've also seen like a demo that kind of really made me think about how VR could potentially be used. You said earlier that it was used to let veterans visit a memorial.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I've seen someone recreate a Miyazaki scene in the Oculus. How much of the market, how big do you think that side of VR, what percentage of the market do you think that will grow into? Like because I know right now most people think VR, I think most people would think of games, but how big do you think that side will become? And do you think that that will eventually like become the main reason to get a VR system, or the main driving force behind VR?
Yeah, virtual tourism is a perfect example of something that may in fact outpace the game. There are other usages right now, for instance, virtual architecture, that you can walk in various buildings and see those for the first time, that the architect has taken the time to put together in some sort of a 3D model, which you could never do before. You could never walk around inside of that building. You have to sit there and just kind of joystick your way around. And well, actually, I'm doing this, but you wouldn't. You'd be sitting in front of the screen in a very flat experience. Or you'd be spending millions of dollars to go into a truly immersive surrounding type of system. I think, and I would say Samsung also would agree with this, because they're pushing the whole film aspect much more than they are games. Because I think they're firm believers that the film experience is going to be by far, for one, the content is somewhat probably more fluid and more interesting, because you've got a lot of people out there doing YouTube types of experiences that will also do the same thing inside of a VR type of experience.
And Robert,
yeah,
you can buy $300 360-degree cameras today.
yeah.
And Apple, GoPro, Amazon, and Apple all work with their own 360. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
YouTube started supporting 360-degree uploads.
So to me, that's the real exciting. And now we've even got technology taking those sorts of things and light fields and a brand new camera out there that's actually, the light field technology will allow you to actually get 3D geometry out of that experience. So to me, I think that's got, when you start seeing that tail as it builds out, that's when all of a sudden it starts exploding. You see that. Right now, gaming is the easy piece. It's the easy piece that people can gravitate and get on right now, but the technology is rapidly approaching that. I think that the virtual tourism and other uses for VR is going to dwarf sort of gaming.
Yeah, social's huge. We don't even know what that is.
Yeah, and so I definitely, so in fact, one of my visions that I always love to say, right now, the people that have bought the Omnis are kind of those core gamers, and yes, unfortunately, they're all male. Typically, I think we've got probably, maybe a handful of female customers, but one of the things I really love to share is that we're not all about shooters. We're not all about that. I'm actually anxious for the day that I can sit there and walk down the streets of Paris on the Omni. So to me, that's exciting. Those casual strolls, those casual walks in an area that I would never get the opportunity to go to.
I just had one question about clarification for the hockey stick that you had at the beginning and at the top. Is that a generalized VR hockey stick, or does it or is that specifically for seated Oculus style virtual reality experience? And if so, do you think there's going to be a difference in how adoption rates are going to be with traditional Oculus style stuff versus mobile stuff? And if so, which one do you think will, I guess, reach critical mass faster?
Well, that's an extremely loaded question in many different modalities. One, I believe that hockey stick was created back before the Vive even existed. So that really, Valve was in the skunk works on that with HTC for a number of years, and actually Valve's technology was incorporated in a lot of what Oculus did. They were partnering on a lot of this at the very beginning. So many of the experiments that they were doing, many of the rooms that they were going up, led to the creation of this whole Vive experience. There will be natural barriers. There will be natural barriers in terms of cost. There will be natural barriers in terms of the add-ons that are required, such as the Omni. I'll just use it as a specific case because, hey, this is a $699 device, but I have to have a $1,000 or $1,500 computer to drive it. Oh, but wait, I still don't have a headset. That headset's going to be another $350. So there are going to be natural cost barriers to adoption. So when that hockey stick was taken into account, that was some analyst out there going, well, there's these typical market drivers. And what they typically reflect on are the adopters, meaning the people out there, their incomes, what's disposable, how much they can potentially afford, looking at average costs across these various HMDs, and saying, well, these costs are going to allow them to move about this, and then those costs are going to start to decrease, consumer adoption will increase, number of games will increase, and therefore the generalized hockey stick. They don't necessarily have a lot of the knowledge in whether they even took into account whether it's mobile, whether it's all of these various different modalities.
So the hockey stick we saw didn't actually have like the Gear VR, things like that accounted for?
It would have accounted for the gear, it would have accounted for cardboard, it would have accounted for a lot of those sort of technologies. In fact, the belief is that the mobile side of this, when that one was put out, will dwarf anything that the typical Oculus side or HTC now would actually incorporate as well. But yeah, it did take mobile in there, but not necessarily specific products. And in fact, they're believing that there's going to be many different products out there stealing bits and pieces of market share. Yep.
So I do coaching for people who want to become entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I've found that a lot of times people who are really good with technology or product development aren't necessarily as good with the business side of things.
Yep.
In order to get that hockey stick, you have to know about sales and marketing. So are there people in the VR community who are looking at that end, or is it just a bunch of technology people making cool stuff?
I would say that there are your typical, I don't like to call it predator prey, but it sometimes is, where you've got, for instance, communities that come together and the guys that come in and are looking to be that consultant. There are those out there. There aren't necessarily a ton of business people in this space just yet. They are more typically the passionate ones that are building the products, building the software, building those sorts of things. But I'm certainly not going to discount their knowledge of business, but they're typically not the business guys. So I would say there's a desperate need, especially those in gaming specifically, the understanding that how to market games and how to become discovered, how to get that recognition amongst the many thousands of other games that are out there. That's an extremely important skill that these teams need.
I'd add that what we don't know is how monetization is going to be accessed in a lot of these games. That's why a lot of people can't project so much revenue with a Google Cardboard app, because in-app purchases need confirmation that comes up on a screen that's not accessible to accept in VR. So it's this kind of wall still of how do you do microtransactions? How do you do iAds, which are based upon screen revenue, basically, you know what I mean? So, and you can't do that whenever it's 3D. You can't play something 2D on the screen. So I think there's just a lot of things that need to be solved as far as the marketplace, how our ads going to be done, how our microtransactions going to be done, how our in-app purchase is going to be done, and how is authentication of your credit card. All those things, since there's not a single app in the marketplace that does it in VR yet. Once it does successfully, then you're going to start seeing, I think, people that do pay attention to business jumping on that. We don't have Valve doing it, we don't have Google doing it, we don't have the answer of how do we monetize on that. Until Apple does it,
But
we won't know.
But there are companies using VR for marketing purposes. There are companies out there that use these VR experiences as part of their marketing campaign, because they're a lot of fun. They get people to come in and try and engage with the brand. So you've got NFL, you've got car companies, you've got all these various different brands that are engaging with VR. So once you start to see that big money coming in, you'll naturally see the business people following as well. I'll probably take one more because I want everybody to get a chance to mix and mingle. Yes, ma'am.
Is anybody doing educational stuff in VR?
Yes, there is. In fact, many of them, for instance, some of the very early VR experiences were things like museums.
But here in Austin?
Planet 3 is one here in Austin.
Planet 3, yeah.
Planet 3 is doing, they've shifted over to doing educational VR games as well as user-generated content educational games. So teachers can edit and author the VR experiences for the kids to go through. They can build lesson plans.
So the other side of that is a bit challenging, because Oculus still has a stance that this device is not intended for people below the ages of 13, which, that's something that they're sitting there going, well, we don't really know what the long-term.
But it's just like the 3D guys who are like, yeah, well, you can't really test kids, so we're just going to pretend like it doesn't count. So
Actually, that's to say, Jim Cherry here has a couple of experiences that are educational experiences, as well as matching that. I think we've landed 5 projects just in the past few months that have been for a construction company that wanted to put their logo on a custom printed Google Cardboard and send them out to 5,000 different people. New York Times just sent out a million printed. They purchased 1 million printed Google Cardboards. They're sending out to everybody that has a New York Times membership. You know what I mean? So pretty
So
interesting.
it's the soccer mom in the room
Yeah.
with 2 kids at home who I went home with one of those. It was destroyed within an hour by the little sister and her friend.
You need this
Get
one.
merged.
No, not that one, the card
Yeah.
one. And I was like, oh,
This
because I
one's
kind of,
kid-proof.
and I'm, you know, but I would also say, I was actually, you know, as I've been listening to all this, I was really going to validate on the economic level, as someone who is, I don't consider myself an early adopter. I mean, I didn't get a smartphone early. I have, and I can't believe I'm saying this, bought 3 gaming systems within a period of 6 years.
You're
I guess.
definitely the decision
5
maker.
years. Right.
Yeah.
To upgrade and upgrade and upgrade as he has required. I would be hesitant to put big goggles and things on his head at 8 and 10, even 13 as he is now. So I just so you know, like what a mom's.
I completely agree. It's
but
also.
I would spend. I mean, I have spent $200 to $400 every single time, which I cannot believe if you'd asked me when he was a little one that I would do that, I would have said
This is
never,
the path for
but
kids
never
right
say
now.
never.
This sort of
You're a
thing is
good
the path
mom.
for
You're a
kids.
good
Here we'll make this industry. Yeah, so to me, this is also because, you know, I have a child. I've got 3 children. 2 of them, they're teenagers, 1 that's 5. So when, you know, it's fantastic being able to tell your kids you're in the game industry, you're in VR. You know, they love that. I'm not a warrior, which is not necessarily bad for everybody, but it's something that they can brag to their friends about that my dad's in the game industry. But when I turned around and sat up there and started exploring this whole notion of kids in VR, you know, I was one of the early Oculus Rift guys. So I had the Dev Kit 2, Dev Kit 1, had all these cords on it, and it was extremely challenging for me to use. And then it was sitting there, I wanted to build these fun experiences for my kids. So I started to sit there building these things, and then I have her getting into this thing. And it was atrocious. I mean, it was cords everywhere. She was getting tangled up. We couldn't do it. And so I sat there and said, all right. So I scratched my head for 6 months. The DK2 came out. Then the Gear VR came out. And all of a sudden, I put that on her head. The world opened up to her. It was an amazing experience. So I'm personally very excited to where we can get these devices out to kids and people for educational purposes. We just got to get past this current hang-up of what it potentially does to their eyes. And then we've also, like everything else, we've got to monitor their usage. We've got to be parents, right? Which we can't sit them down with this device and let them go to town and do whatever they want. We actually have to sit there and monitor and take care of them. So, you know, I think there's a certain level of responsibility, but to me, the mobile path is by far one of the easiest and probably one of the best ways to engage kids. And one of the companies out there on the toy business, the Viewmaster, has created one for kids, which is actually something more attuned to what a typical Viewmaster experience is. And it's really nothing more than the cardboard in a different package, but it is a cost-effective way that you can actually approach it. I don't know that I would go for that other than cardboard, but it's just personal experience. Anyway, one last comment?
Well, I was going to say, I think to answer that question too, the smart glasses, you know, the HoloLens, the Epson Vario, and other smart lenses that we're going to be coming out in the next couple of years. I think those, if it works in VR, it works in smart glasses. Smart glasses are another type of VR that don't put blinders on your face. They're a lot more gentle on developing eyes. They usually work well with people that already have glasses as well. So, you know, a lot of times if you have, especially big frame glasses, you can't even put on a VR headset. The Vive has a big space. I've seen people with some big old thick glasses put on the Vive and successfully be able to put it on their face, even with big glasses. But I think smart glasses are going to be somewhere else that we see a lot of revenue coming in for that kind of stuff, because again, it works off of your smartphone, which we've already bought into an adoption rate of every year to 2 as an average adult spender on smartphones. We're already buying those new technologies, and if we have a tertiary thing that's actually not that much, that actually just extends your screen floating up in front of you in augmented reality, I think that's going to be huge, as well as that whole thing of like, if it works in VR and it works full screen on my phone or my iPad just turning around, I don't actually have to then put it on my face and split screen. I can still just have it and still do those things moving around, and people still enjoy that. So I think that's part of the successful games are going to be the ones that don't have VR, but it'd be cooler if you had VR. You can still play it both ways, like Minecraft. I think Minecraft's going to be one of those big sellable features for a game that doesn't need VR, but it'd be a lot cooler if you had some HoloLens, you know what I mean?
Well, I think I'd like to just open the floor to getting back to the bar, but Robert,
Mix and mingle.
can we get a round of applause?
Yeah, Robert.
I think VR in Austin is going to be the next big thing, not just VR in general. So please feel free to bombard Robert with more questions about how you can be involved with VR in Austin, because this is going to be a huge industry right here at home. And thank you for all coming out again. Please feel free to come up, have another drink or two. So
Yeah,
thank you.
and Finn also just mentioned with this this wonderful product called the Dive, which is a Google product, is going to be on display at Unity.
Yeah, the
17th.
Austin Unity event.
Scanning thing?
This is the Project Tango, which is basically about the size of an iPad Mini. Has an infrared scanning depth sensor on it, so I could go like here and place a little tag on the wall. Look over here and tap it and go. This is 48. Has augmented reality.
Come back tomorrow, the job will still be there.
Over here, walk over there. This thing's really cool. So we're going to be doing like a developer deep dive into both how to do it, show them off and show off some of the demos that are pretty awesome in it, and as well as talking about like how to develop for it and their individual marketplace in the Google Play Store for these things, because this is going to be coming out in force with the RealSense technology that the guy from Big Bang Theory does all those commercials for the RealSense. I'm sorry, yeah, the Intel RealSense, that's a camera. It's an infrared camera. So, the Connect, this is like a Connect in your mobile device. I think these are going to be in a lot of different devices because it allows positional tracking like the Vive does. That's why it changes it up. It's because once you can put it on and once you can move left and right and duck and stuff like that, and it actually moves that camera in 3D space, it opens up everything. It changes from like what the Gear VR does to an extra level. So, yeah, the 17th at Mr. Tramp's, and then the 18th at North Door. Be sure to try to get to both of those if you have a chance. On Meetup.
Lots of fun stuff to do. Thanks, guys. Have fun. Let's mingle.
Yeah. And we'll just play a video of what the Virtuous Omni does in action too, if you just want to watch it in the background.
Good talk, man. You can't run it.
I had a
Hey, what's up, man? Yeah, sorry to run late. I totally I was home by the day off too. It was crazy. No problem. Self-fighting, so I made it. So yeah, this is a great talk. I'm actually very stoked that I got to go to it because yeah, they can fight us all together. I know it varies with everybody. I just I think like 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. I think people don't want to eat really interest in drinks, so I think that's awesome.
last time we had a lot of people.
Yeah, I gotta go. Yeah, I gotta go.
Well, let's do that. Well, I'm actually I'm going yeah, I'll just No, I appreciate it. I know, yeah, any of my frustration. Yeah, totally. I appreciate it. I actually really writing VR guy. Yeah, totally. I love it. Actually, I'm so happy. It's like so fantastic. Like it's such a good grade.
I mean, it kind of confirms that
there's some cards, but yeah, I appreciate it. I just wanted to intro and say hi. My name's Joe. We give a fantastic talk. I'm the animation video game laser at the Texas competition. So yes, I just wanted to drop my card and also let you know, honestly, I have been like, in my role, I have been trying to basically tell all of the governor's office, economic development, and everything, how big VR is going to be in 2016 in Texas and how VR is crushing it. So I've been really excited to try to talk more VR things. But anyway, yeah, this is a fantastic talk that actually it highlighted exactly. I'm actually meeting with the economic development tomorrow, and I was like, oh, these are all the bullet points that I try to talk about when I'm talking about VR. So, oh, cool, awesome. I love Jeff. He's my buddy. So, yeah. And I also know Leah Smith. Like, she was before him. She's married to Harvey Smith. Yeah. Cool group. Yeah, so nice to meet you. Yeah, actually, you know, at some point, if I want to pick your brain, actually, about some VR stuff. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I just mean, I'm going to try to make one next week for sure. I know Alex pretty well too, so yeah, I used to kind of be part of the indie scene whenever I got so yeah, before I started wearing blazers. So yeah, so nice to meet
It's like a zero gravity.
One thing that they mentioned, to me,
I know, right? See, I haven't seen this one actually.
so in March, the other
because it was interesting to see.
like where you like live Hi, Robert. I know we can do better. I know we can always do better. Thank you for the initiative. Okay, cool.
That's great. I've been talking about this whole time. And now we and so the Call of Duty is out now?
So Call of Duty
Excuse me, can I have everybody's attention?
You need help?
Robert has chosen the winner blindly, no bias, of the South by Southwest Go badge, and that is Eddie. Oh, Eddie's not here actually, so you're gonna have to choose.
must be present to win.
That's not mine, draw again.
George Pierce.
Oh, yeah!
We're gonna have to beat that, but thank you again for everybody coming out. Feel free to get more drinks, and I'd love to meet every one of y'all.